Welcome to the Strategy Sherpa Show, a series of organic discussions between hosts David Chavez and a variety of notable business leaders centered around their most significant failures and how they handled those challenges, so listeners can learn from their most teachable moments and apply the lessons to their organizations. Now, here's your host, David Chavez.
Hello, good morning, everybody. It's the Strategy Sherpa Show today. We've got a great hosts. We have Dalton Hooks with us. I'll introduce him in just a second. I just want to remind everybody what we do here on the Strategy Sherpa Show, because there's so many positive things out there that talking about how people made their success and out there. We decided not to replicate that. What we wanted to talk about was what were some of the business owners' failures that they had or mistakes that they made inside of their business, and then what did they do to overcome those mistakes? Because oftentimes we learn a lot from the things we don't do well. And so we are using this platform to actually talk to business owners and talk to them about some of the failures that they've had and some of the mistakes they made. And then not only talk about the mistake, but what were the circumstances around those mistakes, and then what they did to overcome and fix the mistake. Because I think that that's where there's a lot of learning for business owners out there who are trying to scale and grow their company. And let's introduce Dalton Hooks. He owns a law firm in Las Vegas, Nevada. He is a workers' comp attorney. I mean, that's his primary thing. He does a lot of other things too, but that's his primary thing. And he represents the employer side of the equation. And Dalton, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and a little bit about you?
Yeah, thanks, David. So as you note, I have a practice in Las Vegas in the area of workers' comp. I've been practicing law for about 20 years. Before becoming a lawyer, I was a bureaucrat. I ran Nevada OSHA and was a compliance officer before that. And even before that, I worked in the workers' compensation system when Nevada was what's called a captive state. So we had an agency called State Industrial Insurance Company that was an agency of the state of Nevada that later turned into Employers Insurance Company and still operates under that name today. So my practice is focused, as you mentioned, on workers' comp. We do by volume in the state of Nevada, we're number 2 in terms of volume, but we do about 80% of my business is workers' comp. The rest is ancillary things, including I represent employers in OSHA matters, what we call industrial relations law, which includes everything else that the agency that regulates OSHA and workers' compensation does. So benefits, penalties. We do subsequent injury, which is a system that employers can get money back from the system if they hire somebody that they know already has an injury, and something called subrogation, which is where if there's a third party involved in a workers' compensation claim, we can pursue that third party on behalf of our client to get money back as well. So that's the broad scope. We have some other ancillary practice areas, but that's the majority of it.
Now, when I first met you years ago, I think we were trying to figure that out the other day, and it's probably 11 to 13 years, somewhere in there. You were actually working for a
right. Looks like you might have frozen on my end, David.
Firm, and then you started your own today. Or how many people do you have inside of your law firm today?
Okay, so today.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Am I back?
You're back. We have about 35 people in the law firm today, and I think you were asking about when we met. When we met, I had a solo practice, Hooks Law Office, and I had joined a California-based firm called Lloyd Scarron and Kelly at the time, and they had worked with Vistage and other groups, and that's how I got connected with you through that practice. And at that time, I managed my office in Nevada because I was the only operation in Nevada, but we had maybe 4-5 employees somewhere in that neighborhood. And the volume of business was, tiny compared to where we are now. So yeah, we're 35 and growing at this moment. I've got an office in Northern Nevada. We've got an office here in Southern Nevada, and are continuing to expand.
That's very good. Okay, I appreciate that. And Dalton and I have known each other for quite a while. We have worked together. So I like to tell people when I've worked with somebody in the past, we haven't worked together probably closely in about 5 years now. And but at the same time, we've stayed in touch, and Dalton's continued to scale and grow his company quite a bit. And now you're in Las Vegas, and that's a great view behind you. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that's not a screen saver or anything like that. That's a live view. You can actually see the traffic going back there.
That's legit. That's legit. We're on the 11th floor here, so you got a pretty good view of the Strip from where I sit.
Okay, and I'm in Westchester, Pennsylvania right now at a scaling up event. So I'm just getting ready to go to that event and doing the radio show in the process. So Dalton, let's talk about some of the challenges that you've had and some of the things that you could have done a lot better. I know you're a really humble guy when it comes to this stuff. You like to talk about these things not from a place of judgment, from a place of understanding. So you love helping other business owners grow their business just as much as I do. And so why don't you share with some of the, let's start off with the first one, the office itself.
Yeah, before I jump right into that, I do just want to acknowledge that, as you said, we've been working together for a long time, and you're a big part of the success that I've had in terms of helping me understand my business and, incorporate the various sources that we use, the stuff from Vern as well as other texts. And the first example really kind of is right out of the E-Myth, right? So it's
Michael Gerber's book, E-Myth Revisited, right?
Right. So, which is one of the many readings that you've had us do in the past. And as we were scaling, as we were starting this incarnation of my law firm, we spent a lot of time working with you to lay foundation and get out. And then we still made all the same mistakes, but at least we knew how to name for it. I hired from that book a Harry. It's the story of Harry, and Harry is a manager that was hired in the textbook by someone who, starting a small business, trying to grow it, trying to get herself out of the whirlwind, and she hires somebody who doesn't share her vision, her values, or anything like that. And I did something similar, except in my case, the person was someone I had known for a couple of decades, had a background in law and business, and I thought that would work really well as we were, really getting to a point where the business was growing dramatically, and I needed to step back out of the whirlwind along with me and my partners. But it ended up being a fiasco that resulted in me fighting with my partners and near the end. So
just to clarify for the audience, you hired somebody because you wanted to get out of the day-to-day operations of the company, and you hired somebody that you had known for quite a while. And right. Tell us a little bit about what we'll do that on the next segment. But you hired somebody you knew. Tell us a little bit about the circumstances of why you hired them. Like what were the qualifications? What were the things you saw in this person that you thought would make it work?
Well, it's interesting because I hired the person around the time that we started working together in a different capacity, as you're working in the business as almost like a paralegal, doing actual legal drafting and work like that, which the person did, fairly well at that job. It was a long ramp to get them to where I thought they were proficient. And then after that is when I moved the practice a couple of times. So I moved it to a bigger local or a Nevada law firm. And at that point, their role started expanding a little bit, kind of training some new people coming on. And then when I started the current business proper, in this incarnation, Hooks, May and Clement, or HMC, is when I brought them in specifically to be the office manager. And that's kind of when the trouble began, but I didn't realize. Right.
So what you were doing is you opened up a new office because your other office, you ran out of room. So you were growing pretty rapidly at that time. and you needed a lot more space. And I think you almost more than doubled your space, didn't you? Because you knew that the cases were coming. Your reputation was really taking off for the law firm and some of the work it had been done. And then you acquired a couple of partners in the process, and they were bringing their work in. So you definitely needed a much bigger space.
We needed more space and we needed more people, which is why I needed somebody really to kind of do HR and be in a management role that would remove me and the partners from having to do it ourselves, plus all of the other work, right?
That's great.
And so what I learned after, you saw problems and cracks and just couldn't figure out what was going on, but this person just didn't share our values, was literally kind of going behind us and doing the opposite of what, if you were just looking at our core values on paper, they were supposed to be doing. So you'll recall during this time, I had a lot of turnover, people leaving in positions. I'm like, I don't understand why there's so much turnover. But what I later learned, much later, was that this person was like just being kind of nasty to people and concealing it and telling them that they couldn't come and talk to us. And if they did, they would be fired. So it was really not a great situation.
Right.
But the core of it was just not sharing our values about what built the business and how we were moving forward. And we tried. Yeah.
But let's get back to the mistake you made, because like what I really want to do is point out what happened. And just for a moment, let's take a little bit of a break and let me talk a little bit about that Dalton at the time had a heavy caseload. He was pretty busy, so busy it was hard for him to even make an appointment a week, 3 weeks out, more or less. It could even be 4. I think it was a couple months. Usually it was hard to get an appointment on your calendar. And so you were so busy, you decided to promote this person that had been working in your firm. Now they were doing a really good job at the time, were they not? At their
core job. Yeah, sure. Exactly.
Right. And so they were a good core value fit for that job. Is that correct?
For the prior job, in terms of just getting their work done and, meeting those metrics. Yes. It was when
Yeah. So we'll pick this up on the other side, because I wanted to talk about a few other things before the break, and then we'll pick this up again. So let's keep it right there and let's plant a flag there. I just wanted to remind everybody, we do have events and you can learn about these events at assuredstrategy.com/events. And what we have, the Metronomics workshop in Portland on the 7th of next month. And that is going to be done by our coach, Ted Servata. And then we also have a webinar that's going to be done by Warren Sager. He's going to be doing how to grow your business with 5 proven tools, and just helping you get your business going, just that initial start. And he's using these 5 tools to really get you some clarity inside of your company so that you can get that heavy push going forward. And Dalton, you probably know all these tools because these were some of the same tools you got introduced to. And I just want to remind everybody, this show is about helping people understand some other people's mistakes that they made, not because you're not going to make mistakes, just so you can learn a little bit about how to go about fixing some of the things that maybe you don't think about as well as you should have when you're doing it. Because like Dalton was really busy at the time. He needed somebody. And he went inside of his company to try to find the best person, and we'll pick it up from that on the other side. And Dalton, I know this brings back some painful memories for you. So
it sure does.
All right. So this is Assured Strategy. This David Chavez with Assured Strategy. This Strategy Sherpa show. Trying to say that all real fast doesn't really work real well. And we'll catch you on the other side of the break. All right, Dalton, we're back. Hey, while we were gone, I learned how to speak correctly. So this is the Strategy Sherpa show. And we're talking to Dalton Hooks. And we're talking a little bit about needing somebody to run the office and the day-to-day administration of the company, help with hiring, because you are in rapid growth mode. You were really busy with the heavy caseload. So let's pick it up from there, and let's get the audience back into where we were at.
Yeah. So since the idea of the show is to talk about the mistake you made, let's just talk about the mistake. I hired somebody who I thought would be able to do the job, and instead of hiring slow and firing fast, I fired. I never fired. In fact, got to the point that really became the conflict between me and my partners. Like, this person is failing and you're protecting them. You won't let them go. What's the deal? We need to have somebody in this role who's performing, right? And so that was really the crux of the problem. And it's because I had a long-term relationship with this person, had known them, again, I think I said a couple of decades, worked with them before. On paper, this should have been the ideal position for this person. Somebody who had both a legal background and a business background, and should have been able to merge those together to manage, about a dozen, a little bit more than a dozen people, but it just never worked out. So
they even had an MBA, if I'm not mistaken, right? There was a lot of qualifications here.
Lot of qualifications on paper, but not a lot of execution. And my failure was to not accept that the execution wasn't there and kind of move on that information.
Right.
And so it continued to cause problems inside of the business, with key things just not getting done, initiatives not being moved forward, things that we were working on in our group with you, such as coming up with key indicators and critical numbers and trying to implement those into the business and get people moving in the right direction, not happening. One-to-ones not being done. All of those kinds of things are the problems that were happening. But the big one, and you were aware of this at the time, is that this person also had responsibility for accounts receivable and supervising our money department, right? We had a small, right? So we're having arrears that are, during this person's tenure, growing and growing and growing. Like, what the heck? The person who had the job before you had none of your background and was able to do the job better.
Yeah, well, and let's just give people context. Like, it was probably almost $1 million. I mean, you were having significant cash flow problems because of some of the lack of focus from this person, to the point where the partners quit getting a check, right? That's what really spurred off some of the issue, right? Because it
had become very dire in terms of what was going on, and lest there be any doubt that this is where the problem was, immediately after that person's departure, things turned around.
All your clients paid you. It wasn't that they didn't want to pay you; they just didn't have the bill.
Correct. They were not being billed properly. There wasn't none of the follow through, and so that is really as the manager, as the owner of the business, they talked about an E-Myth. You can't entrust somebody with your business who doesn't share your values, your passion, right, for what it is, and you can't make somebody have that passion. We tried to, I'm thinking, well, we can coach our way out of this situation. Let's offer this person a bonus if they get the A&R down by X%. Well, that did no good. So their own financial interest didn't motivate them to do the job any better. And we talked during a break a little bit about, at the end of the day, you have to recognize that there's a competency issue that you're not dealing with. You're hurting not only your business and your team, you're hurting that person by having them flailing around in a job that they're not succeeding at, right? And all because of my sense of loyalty and wanting to be fair in terms of, well, have we assigned them too many tasks? How is this my fault? How is this our fault, right? And that just didn't work, when the solution was, you have somebody who's in the wrong seat on the bus and you need to act on that information. But the fear was, and it's coming from a place of fear. Well, if I replace this person, then I don't have anybody in there and I'm going to have to do it myself again, which is ultimately what happened anyhow. Because after after a partner meeting where we all had a big blowout about this person, to where it was on the crux of people being like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. We came up with a solution. We excuse me, we committed to a direction, which was we're going to do one last coaching, 3 months probation. If it doesn't work out, they're gone. The person themselves committed to this, and then the weekend after that meeting, this meeting happened on a Friday. They came and cleaned out their desk, deleted everything off of their computer, blocked access to everything that we needed, and vanished. So no good deed goes unpunished. I'm bending over backwards trying to save this person, and when push came to shove, they showed their true colors, right? So
Yeah,
that's exactly what happened.
I think this was one of the best learning things for you as far as people go. And you said at the in just a few moments ago, you said something about you're supposed to hire slow and fire fast. And what you did is you hired fast, and then you never really fired. You just let it keep on going. And your partners and you were having problems, right? Because naturally they were trying to help you see. And you were trying to give. So I think something I've known about you for years is your heart's very big, and so it is. I mean, you're a very generous person, and so you were trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I didn't teach him. Maybe I didn't coach him. Maybe I didn't do these things. And you were trying to challenge yourself as a leader to be better as a leader, but you can't give somebody two things, and that's the willingness and desire to do the job, right? And so his competency level wasn't high enough. So basically you didn't test his competency level. And then you weren't really looking at the willingness and desire like your partners were.
That's right. That's right. Because I had, again, call it a big heart, call it just a overinflated sense of loyalty, call it just my eye on the wrong, not keep my eye on the ball of, which my partners had, distance from this person and could say, look, you are not paying attention to what's actually happening, right? You're living in some fantasy world. And what we need is brass tacks and this job being performed. That's why we hired the position. And right now you're hurting all of us because you won't make the tough decision, right? So that's what it came down to. My partners had to call me on it, and then even then I was like, well, let's one last chance, let's see. Which didn't go over all that well, but again, since I was in a position to kind of be able to force my will, I did, and obviously I regret it because it was the wrong decision. And by not doing something, we also gave everybody else in the organization permission to not do their job, to think that there's no consequences for failure.
Oh, I think you're covering something really important. So what happened as a result of this guy and his lack of focus on doing his job? He was actually infecting some of the really good employees inside your company that had been performing up to this time really well.
Absolutely. A players like to be around A players, and they also like to see that, they're in a meritocracy. They don't like to see people flailing around and still succeeding and, getting even bonuses and structures that are allowing them to fail even further, right? So That's exactly right. So we created a situation that was counter to our culture. I created a situation, let me be clear. I created a situation that was counter to our culture and definitely deleterious on the staff's morale, performance, you name it. It was, you said it exactly right. It was like an infection, and it had to be dealt with. And sadly, we lost the opportunity to show our values by saying, no, we're going to cut this infection out, because we allowed it to just leave on its own, which is fine. The end result was things got better, but it really should have been, and one of my partners, really his biggest lament was that we didn't actively excise the infection. ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And your two partners are probably some of the best known attorneys in the areas that you practice law in the state of Nevada too. And they didn't want their reputations hurt by some of the things that were going on. And also they cared for you. You guys all seem to get along really well. You have a great partnership. I know that, no partnership goes without challenges, even like a marriage or a relationship or something like that. No partnership goes without challenges. But at the same time, these guys were really caring for you and trying to talk to you about it.
That's
and
right.
You were trying to give that person an opportunity. So everybody's intentions here were really good. But the frustration hit a boiling point because the business really wasn't working.
Well, in fact, it got to the point where one of my partners said, "Hey, look, if this was intentional sabotage, there's no way I would be able to tell the difference from what I'm actually experiencing." Right. And so, yeah, it was a hard lesson. But as you say, it was one that probably had one of the biggest impacts on me in terms of business. And I was like, never again.
Well, I also think just knowing your partners a little bit, I actually think it brought you guys a lot closer together.
Yes.
Because you were able to get through this.
That's right. In the end, that's exactly what happened.
Hello, everybody. This is David Chavez, the Strategy Sherpa, the Strategy Sherpa Show. And we have Dalton Hooks with us. And sorry about my technical issues. Sometimes when you're traveling, you never know what the internet's going to be like. So I got out my trusty MiFi and got and reconnected. So Dalton, great session. And thank you for sharing. I know it's not easy going through some of these pains all over again, because that was a pretty challenging experience for you. But I think that you and your partners grew stronger out of it. That's for definite. Just because I have personal knowledge of that. And it really solidified the growth of the firm, though, too. It was sort of like the catalyst to the next level, because it made you realize some of the mistakes that you were making in the firm that were really costing you a lot. And it really centers around people, right? Getting the right people in the right seats and making sure they really know what they're doing and having clarity of what you will need done. Is that fair?
That's right. That's absolutely right. And, hopefully that's a lesson learned that I won't have to learn again the hard way. But David, I've made so many mistakes.
You and me both. All right. So you had another thing that you wanted to share with everyone. So give you that platform.
Yeah, you talked about this one, how this was kind of as we're coming out of one valley of death going into another one. I had that problem, but really at the inception of all this, at the start of it, in terms of really trying to get out of being somebody who's working in his business and working on it and actually controlling it. The start of that was really you and I, you coaching me and getting me to realize my biggest problem was in my head and I needed to get out of my own way. And that was this. I would tell you all the time, look, I'm in professional services business as a lawyer. My clients want what I do specifically, and it's really hard to get them to allow me to use my other associates, my team, because they're like, no, we want you to do it. And I would tell you all the time that my major competitor has the exact same issue. And what you said to me was pretty heartbreaking at the time. It was really, really devastating when you said to me, yeah, Dalton, I don't think I can say any curse words that you actually used on the air. But what you said
you can say anything you want, Dalton.
What you said was, you're full of crap. You like being the guy. You like being the guy, and you like the idea of being this great lawyer in court all the time, fighting for your clients, until you let that go and decide whether you want to be somebody who has a job with a horrible boss, or if you want to have a business that can be scaled. It's really up to you. And so that realization was pivotal in moving from a practice that was going to be limited by how many hours there are in a day and how much work I could do, versus one that could be scaled by using, a team to do so. And so during that time, you were there. What I did was I told my clients, all of them, every file that comes in the door, I treat it like it's mine. I review every single document, whether it's coming in or going out. I personally proofread and revise and all that stuff. And I did that until I wound up in the hospital in 2014. Right. And the aftermath of that was being in the hospital for 2 weeks and then subsequently having to have surgery later. But during that time, I couldn't do anything. And guess what? The business didn't implode, and my team stepped up and did the work, and my clients allowed them to do the work. And that was, I mean, it literally took you telling me and then me ending up in the hospital for me to get this, to learn this message.
Yeah, and I would recommend to all the people listening that you don't want to go through the hospital experience to get to this, to get to the other side of this issue, because a lot of people probably listening right now, if you own a business or you're a leader in a business, you're probably experiencing some of the same thing. I can't delegate this. I can't give it to somebody else. I can't trust them with it. And so the catalyst for you was really going in the hospital because you made yourself sick because of working way too many hours.
Right. There's only so many days in a row that you can literally work 20 to 21 hours right. And burning the candle at both ends. And I was willing to sacrifice myself because I cared about the business that much, and I cared about the quality of the work that was going out. But you cannot get blood from a turnip. And as I say, that's not sustainable, nor is it scalable, right? So if you want to scale, you have to accept that, okay, Dalton, you're the greatest writer to ever enter into the legal field. And you're the greatest your greatest oral argument guy that there ever was, short of learn at hand. But if you want to have business, you're going to have to accept that you're going to need to let some other people have a swing at it. And you're going to have to if your clients refuse, then you're going to have to get other clients. You're going to have to look at who are your core customers and, all of the things, what's your profit X? How is this going to work in terms of being a business rather than just a job? And if you want a job, that's fine. But let's be honest about that and just be a lawyer. Don't try to be a guy who's pretending to be in business, because you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the humility you have around these things. Like I've met a lot of lawyers in my career as a CPA and worked with a lot of attorneys, and there's a lot of arrogance in your profession, which there has to be, right? Because you got to win for your clients, right? And so you have an ego side to you. And then you also have to have this humility side too. And it's funny because as leaders, we have to have an ego, but we also have to have a lot of humility too, because we have to have confidence in what we're doing. But we also need to be understanding that we're not perfect. And sometimes we make the wrong decisions or we do things incorrectly.
Right. And that's what I know about your business. Even your core customer is a business leader who has that humility, like from Hungry, Humble, Smart. And sure, I have all kinds of ego. When we talk, when we first met, when you were interviewing me to see if you were going to let me join your group in the first place, I told you the story about my first job and how I've been managing people like literally since I was 16. Working at McDonald's.
Well, why don't you share that? Because I think it would be really interesting for people to hear how you started your entrepreneurial endeavors from your dad's kick.
Okay, fair enough. So about the time that I turned 16, that weekend, my dad was a chemist at the test site and then became an electrician and had a very simple rule in life. If you're going to work, you must work. The idea is to get the most amount of money for the least amount of work. But the whole thing is work. And so that Saturday I woke up and he said, son, today you're going to go get a job and you're not going to come home until you have one. And I said, what? And he says, yeah, I'm very serious. Do not come home today without a job.
Nothing like that in 108-degree temperature in Las Vegas as a kid when you only have a bike.
Exactly. You remember the story well. My car was a bike, and where we lived was a good 5 miles from it was Green Valley, and this is in the 80s. Green Valley was just built. There was nothing but desert out there. and you had to ride at least 3 miles to get towards civilization. And so I got on my bike at my dad's instruction, because my dad did not play, and he meant exactly what he said. This was not a joke. And so I went off to go get a job. I rode however far it was in 100-degree weather, and I showed up at Miller's Outpost, which is the closest thing that I could get to. And they were like, yeah, here's an application, kid. And no managers are going to be here until next week. Did I mention it was a Saturday? This was like literally Mission Impossible. But I had to come up with something. So I got on the bike and rode another couple of miles to the next place, which was a McDonald's. And fortunately, since it's McDonald's, they had managers there. They had an application. Apparently, they needed somebody because they hired me. So I got the second job that I applied for, and started that job. Again, I'm 16, and by the time 3 months has rolled around, I've been elevated to crew chief, and then a new store was built out near Sunset Park by a man named Doug Reichard. He had the first McDonald's that was technically, I guess, in Henderson, in the new part anyhow, and he hired me to be the opening manager. So had that job when I was 16, did my first business trip to San Diego a couple of months later, and would ride my bike in at just prior to 4 a.m., open the store, ride back to my house, and then catch the bus and go to school. That was, so I thought, in terms of management, I've been doing this for forever. But you still make mistakes. You still make mistakes.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about your dad for a second, because, I know how much you love your dad, and I know how much you admire what he did for you. It sounds really harsh, but your dad knew one thing, and I think that this is what you've talked to me about several times. He knew that work gives you purpose, right, in your life. Right. And there's nothing better than your own satisfaction from applying your own efforts to something and getting value out of that. Is that a fair way of saying it?
That's absolutely right. And my dad learned from his dad, who was blind, but owned his own business, and always worked and took care of his family. And so those values came down in the family, and probably more than even just the work ethic. Because again, my dad was about working smart. Ultimately, he soured on the idea of me working for McDonald's because he thought I was being taken advantage of. He's like, you're working all these hours and you're not really making any money, and became negative about it. But more importantly, what my dad always taught me is to think. And I still teach this lesson to associates and folks that work with me. You really have to spend some time thinking and then act. You got to think about what you're going to do before you do it. And it seems like some people just go through the motions and kind of skip that step. But yeah, I do love my dad, and he's been a great and invaluable influence on my life. Yeah, for sure.
Most definitely.
But yeah, that story. At the time, people thought my dad was just being mean to me, and because
Hey, let's come back on the other side of the break, and we'll talk for a second about this, because I want to bring up one more thing. But Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez, the Strategy Sherpa, and we have Dalton Hooks with us, sharing some great experiences. Hey, this is David Chavez, the Strategy Sherpa with the Strategy Sherpa Show, and we have Dalton Hooks with us. And hey, Dalton, this last weekend I was in Harvard, and we did a scaling up event with Vern Harnish there in conjunction with Harvard, and we were doing it on business valuations, and it was for companies over 10 million. And next year they have another one they're going to be doing, and it's by invitation only. And we had about 100 CEOs there, and it was really I wanted to tie this back to your first story, because I was just looking at the stats, because I sort of they had to share like what was one of the things that really increased our value in our company. And I would tell you, I think there was 20 and I counted really fast. It was either 19 or 20 CEOs that brought up getting the right people in the right seats doing the right things right. And that goes back to your very first issue, where you're trying to have grace, you're trying to believe in this person. And it was just a great experience to listen to how many of us have had challenges around this. And how I usually explain it to people is that, we've went to dinner with these people. We know their kids, we know their families. We become close to them because we're down in the trench together, growing this company from small to the mid stage. And I have to really ask myself, is this the right person? And really help me take this to the next level. And you have to sort of look at, like, are these leaders in my company that I'm trusting now going to be able to take it to the next level, right? And I think the real thing is do they have the willingness and desire to take it to the next level? And that's the part that you have to make sure that they do. And how I sort of look at this and how I sort of evaluate this and how people think about it, are they investing in learning themselves? And that's a good sign, right? Share with us a little bit about what you've seen, like, even because I know you're even a lot bigger than you were at the time all this is happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, even dealing with that person specifically, it's funny that you mentioned that. At every turn in my career where I've advanced, I always search out reading or a coach like you or someone who can help me point in the direction. And it is really that humility to have. And if you were to look back at this person, there was nothing that they didn't already know, right? There was nothing that you could teach them. There was nothing that they didn't know better than you and everybody in the room. And that is, I would say, thank you for saying that, because that's a true red flag. Somebody who's not willing to put in the work is not somebody who's willing to grow. And even if they are at the level that you're at for whatever stage in the business that you are, it doesn't mean they're going to be the person to be able to get to the next level, because you have to be willing to accept that you don't know everything and be prepared to learn. And then, of course, at some point, you got to accept that you can't be the smartest person in the room all the time, and you need to be looking for people that are smarter than you. And if they're not the type of person who's willing to see that, they're not going to hire the right people. They're going to be trying to protect their own territory, which is not what you want.
Yeah. Right? And they want to control all the data, right? And that's sort of something this guy was doing to you too. He's trying to control everything themselves. They didn't want anybody else helping them because they didn't want to lose their job, right?
Or for us to know where all the bodies were buried or any of that, right? And that's exactly, so huge red flag if you've got somebody who's not willing to put in the work and do the learning. That's something that I think I've taken out of this, and you've just helped to crystallize that. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's, I like to end the show with talking about, like, where are you taking your firm? What's your longer term goal with this firm?
Yeah. So as you've said, we've been growing, and that's kind of it's my good fortune to, have had the practice on average double in size about every 3 years or so. And so we're still on that curve, hasn't changed much. And so I think, we just got this new space. We have 11,000 square feet here, and we're literally out of space right now.
And
so
hold on, you just rented this place. I think it was like maybe how long ago did you get into this place?
We've been here for literally 3 months.
Okay, I was gonna say, because it can't be longer than 6 months, because right. I think
so you think we'd be a little bit better at planning, but there are some opportunities right now that we're exploring. We're going to be growing even more. As I said, we got a Northern Nevada office, this office, but even when we moved in, we were already scoping for additional space. We just thought we had a little bit more time. So there's more space in this building that we're going to be pursuing. In fact, this week, we're going to be picking up additional space. So what my expectation is, what the plan, as it were, is that we're going to continue. This is just growth within our niche, within workers' comp. In the distant horizon, we've been, as I said, playing with some what we call right now side hustles, a couple of other things that we do. And so we may expand our offerings to our customers in some different areas, but we will always continue to focus on our core business, which is the workers'
it sounds like you have some good business secrets going on here right now. Stuff that you can't fully divulge.
I don't know anything about what you're talking about, David.
That's great. So there's some long-term opportunity.
We're growing.
Yeah. So, and that's great. And for all the business owners out there, you're a business attorney, like you represent the business side of things, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Like what's your long-term game plan for this? I know that you've really grown a lot since where you started from. You have a great reputation in the state of Nevada and it's in other states. I mean, people actually seek you out to help with other cases in other states too. Other attorneys do. And tell us what the long-term game is here.
Yeah, so in our work that I've done with you, our BHAG is to have touched and helped 100,000 businesses, and our target for that was by I think 2025 and 2030, and that was at the time a pretty big stretch goal. I think that we're moving towards that, and as is often the case in scaling up, firms find that they blow that out of the water before they ever think that it might be possible. So that's part of our direction. We're working hard to expand our base in our niche, and again, considering expanding beyond that. So I can't thank you enough for the work that you've done in helping us strategize and come up with not only a 20-mile march and a BHAG, but all of the things that go along with that, and making sure that the core values are alive in our business to help us achieve that. So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So this is the Strategy Sherpa Show. This is Dalton Hooks, and he just shared some great things with us. And we look forward to you coming back and visiting the show. And if you're interested in looking at what we do, it's assuredstrategy.com. And as Dalton just highly recommended, we help businesses grow, and we help you think about your business much differently. And so we appreciate your time today, Dalton, and we appreciate your candidness and humbleness in sharing with some of the learning that you have, and keep growing.
Thanks, David. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show. I'm David Chavez. Thank you for visiting.